Hello. I don't know about you, but earlier in my career, I was very intimidated by larger, bigger lighting setups. So that's actually what today's video is about, because you don't need to be intimidated by these bigger lighting setups, but you can see the power and the use of them and when to actually go about setting them up. So this is an in-depth video from jumping out of the truck, setting up the lights, all the way to tweaking it at the end. And this is taken from our cinematography course. So you can just jump ahead to the video if you want that right now. But a little background on this video, it's one of 60 videos out of the Cinematic Eye. This is our new in-depth cinematography course. And this is being taught today by Derek Lamoureux from Set Ready Rentals. I actually learned a lot on set that day, and so I'm sure you will as well from this video. I'll get out of the way, comment below, let us know if there's any other lighting tutorials that you guys are interested in. What we've done with the Cinematic Eye is try to take you from the very basics, the foundations of cinematography, all the way through documentary, medium budget, and up to $10 million Netflix episodes, so that you have reference for any part of your journey. All right, see you at the end.
All right, we're gonna go into the truck and we're gonna take a look at, we've got a 2-ton package, so we've got every option you could ever want, but we're gonna try to keep it smaller and like a little bit more nimble. So we're gonna start with a panel light and just like a T-bar of 8x8, and then maybe we'll try like a hard light through a softbox, and then we're gonna try like no light and see what a small light, medium-sized light, and a big light looks like. Okay, so we got a couple different options of silk, and maybe we'll talk about what these do. So we've got quarter grid, full grid, and we've got half grid. So those are 3 different options. They're gonna diffuse the light very differently. So this truck has all 3 of those on it. And then we also have like a bounce on this truck. So if we needed more level and we didn't like the contrast ratios, we might use a bounce. Or if we wanted to take away level, we might use the neg. So I think the negative fill. So I'm gonna bring in all of these and we'll just see what looks good. One of the biggest things you wanna do when you're setting up your key light is emulate where your sunlight is coming from. So in this case, our sunlight's coming from these windows. So we wanna make sure our key light is on the same side as our sunlight so that we're not putting it on the opposite side and we're getting double shadows, shadow from the sun, shadow from our light. We wanna put it on the same side as our sun that is coming in, which means we're gonna have to move a lot of stuff out of our way. So we're building a really quick run and gun setup here. So if you only had like, a little 4x frame with a grip head, one stand, we can do all of this on one stand here. And then we're gonna do it through a 4x4 to start to show the difference between a 4x frame and then what an 8x frame looks like, because it's gonna spread onto our subject a lot differently because we have more fabric to push it through.
Derek, you're gonna spark this light?
Yeah, let's spark it. So that's pretty harsh, right?
I was gonna say, looking pretty, as we say, sourcey, and why we're saying that is this doesn't feel natural. I think often the goal for an interview is for it to look as natural as possible. Like anytime you see a Netflix series or any of these, they don't feel lit. They feel nice, but they don't necessarily feel lit.
This is looking sourcey because it's quarter grid, which means that it's a really thin diffusion, so it's not really taking a lot of the level off our subject. So I'm gonna switch this.
It goes quarter, half, full. And is there anything past full? I'm actually genuinely curious.
No, there's 2 types of fabrics really that most people would use for diffusion. You have silks and you have grids. Today we're gonna use grids because we have 3 different options. We have quarter, full, and half. And then you have bounces and other different types of fabrics that you could use as well.
So this lighting right now on screen I'm looking at, this reminds me of when I would light in film school, because we would just have these Fresnel lenses. We wouldn't have any diffusion. And as you can see from Kim, yes, she is the same brightness or same exposure as the outdoors, but that's so harsh. This is like film noir right now. My biggest comment looking at this, and I know we're just starting, is I think we might end up needing to go to a bigger source, because it's with a wider shot, we need to have more wrapped lighting.
And that's the biggest thing when you're setting up a light is like, it's not necessarily how big your light is, but it's how far away you can get the light to make it feel less sourcey on our subject. Like we want, we don't want to feel that underneath her eyes. We want to just feel like it's ambient from the window, because that's, again, what we're emulating is that window light.
Because the angle that this is coming on, it's casting a pretty big shadow. Kim, just look to camera. We're getting a pretty big shadow on that side of the face, like a really intense Rembrandt lighting here.
Yeah, I think like right now, if you're going for like a really hard, drama style lighting, you would want it really sidey. With this next one, we've wrapped it, so it's gonna look a little bit different to the end viewer, but this is gonna be, our full grid, so this is the most level of diffusion that we could have.
Take a look at what that's looking like now, and I'll open back up. Yeah, wow, geez. Well, in the edit here, we'll show you from quarter to full, but already it's like we can still take this further, I would say,
I think the 8x8's gonna make it just feel less sourcey, because what the 8x8's gonna do for everyone that's looking is right now the light's primarily lighting up Kim.
Yeah.
Right? It's not really going anywhere else.
Very true.
So it still, in my opinion, feels sourcey.
Yes, but I guess when I'm specifically looking at her face right now,
her face looks really good.
We zoom in just on that, that's looking much better. But yes, I feel like you can still feel a bit of the intensity of the light because of what's happening, I think, on her shadow side. So yeah, let's try and wrap this a bit more.
Yeah, let's see what an 8x8 does.
And one key, always, is take a picture of the room. Because if this wasn't our house and we had to wrap at the end of the day, you want to know where everything is. So I'm just taking pictures of everything here. So this is the T-bar?
Yeah, so you could, it's funny, Mark, when I first started, I would just put in like a Cardellini clamp and then clamp it to a painter's pole.
Oh, just a painter's pole.
$30 for
and then you'd hang your big silk.
Yeah, that's all I did for the first couple years.
That's so cool. I remember one of the first videos I ever shot with Mati on his YouTube channel is we actually hung a shower curtain just on a pole. Yeah,
yeah, I have one of those in my kit.
Yeah, exactly, and it kind of diffused the same way.
Well, we can start with the quarter grid, and then we'll just need to get them, they're in the bags over there, we'll just need to start clamping them in between each of these setups.
Quarter grid.
It has a label on the very bottom.
Yep. I picked it up. Why is it called silent?
There's noisy and silent grid. And it's a difference in how the stitching in the fabric is.
Oh, interesting. So you can see this is almost like a shower curtain. It's just, it's made by a film company, so it's 8 times the price. So. Okay. So right now we still just have our Dyno 650, this panel light. That's the only thing hitting Kim's face. You can see how harsh it is. But Derek is going to raise up our 8x8 grid here, and wow. It's just night and day. It's not really night and day in terms of exposure, but in contrast of style, like you can already see.
So the biggest thing as you go through different types of fabrics, so quarter grid is going to reduce the least amount of light onto your subject. So in this case, we're not losing a lot of level from our key light, so we're battling windows. So I would say, Kim's skin's still a little bit hot. Let's try a half grid. That's usually my favorite fabric. And then we'll lose a little bit that hotness on her face. Yeah. We'll probably wrap it around a little bit more, but it's nice because now on the 8x8, our panel's filling out 8 feet instead of just 4 feet.
Yeah, you're right. It is still a bit bright on the right side of her face. So yeah, let's try that out.
Okay.
So one little quick thing, this is an Airbnb, and so we don't own this house, and we want to protect the floors. Even if it is our floors, we'd want to protect them as well. So if you pan down there, you can see we have sound blankets and tennis balls. It's a little trick. You cut them into a X here, and then what we're able to do is just stick that onto the end of all these legs here, so that while we're moving them around, it's just tennis ball scraping across the floor and not the side edge, because you will, when you start getting really heavy lights like this with this giant 650, you start pushing that across a hardwood floor, you're gonna leave a big line. So make sure to protect it. Renting some extra sound blankets is always useful. Yeah, we've also put them on this chandelier. Oh, I'm good. That's gonna be a goose egg. Ow. Another one bites the dust. Because both Landon and I so far have smoked our heads on these corners. I'm gonna have a goose egg tomorrow. So now we have a half grid on here, correct, Derek?
Yeah.
And so we'll see the difference of this between that and the quarter. Okay, so we've definitely lost some more light, but you are correct. You can see, yeah, it is looking much, much more soft. Like this is looking much more pleasant. There still is some source to it, as I would say, but I don't know if how much we're gonna be able to get past that. I'm just bringing down the overall exposure here. It's that sky up there, this sky. That's kind of bothering me.
Yeah, it's always nice to have different values in your shot. So you have some dark areas, some light areas, and I think we're in a pretty good place now. I mean, I may back the light actually physically up a little bit.
Okay, so you're backing up and you're kind of coming more frontal as well at the same time.
Yeah, just trying to get that wrap just on that side of her face a little bit more. So now, we can start to see, it depends. It depends on the mood that you're going for. If you want something really dark and contrasty, you may want to have the key light more sidey. For this, we're trying to do a nice wrap. The other thing, if you really didn't like the amount of shadow you were getting on the one side, you could put in a bounce.
Yep.
I would never put in another light on that side.
No.
I would bounce in our existing light.
Well, we should try that. Want to try that?
See what it looks like?
Yeah,
Sure.
yeah, let's see what that looks like. Okay. Like on my CNN documentary, we were talking about a pretty intense subject with like a girl being trapped in a well and the intensity of this town. So often we would light the interviews pretty dramatically. In this case, it's just like perhaps a simple testimonial video for a client, or maybe it's just a person talking about their experience in a documentary that doesn't need that dark mood. So yeah, we're trying to keep this a bit more light, a bit more natural, not as necessarily as brooding and dark and moody.
You have two different types of contrast ratios. You have the contrast ratio on your subject's face, and then the contrast ratio between your subject and the background. And right now, on Kim's face, if we pulled up false color, and we can see that there is two very clear and distinct contrast levels on her face. Yeah. And then within our scene, we can see the contrast levels in our scene itself.
Yeah. I've heard people saying like you should always flop the contrast levels, but I think that's kind of corny. I don't think that happens in real life. Like that if this side of her face is 60 IRE, then the other side of the background over here should be 60 IRE. Perhaps if you're in a studio and you're saying this is just like studio lighting, but in real life it doesn't work that way.
No, I think there's no like recipe. Like people get so fixated on like the background has to be this and this ratio. I think honestly it's based on your scene and your subject, and let the story drive the way the visual should look.
All right, so we're pretty happy with where we're at, but Derek was mentioning that we could do one more thing, which we're at a half grid.
We're at a half grid right now. I mean, let's show people what a full grid could look like if we did it. We did the 4 buys from quarter to full, so let's do the 8 buys, and we might like this one better.
And then the last thing we're thinking of doing was adding perhaps a hair light. That's the only thing. I mean, the room is getting now a lot more soft. We're no longer getting the hard sun on the floor as we're going later into the day. We have some along here. And I do agree with you now about the background here. This I was like, I want to see the curtain across. But you're right, having a little dapple of light, it's not very big, kind of helps. We often, myself, if I'm lighting a thing by myself, I'm just using like, different aperture lights that are, 3 feet wide to 6 feet wide. And those seem very comfortable. And then when people start mentioning about grids, it's like, oh, that seems a lot of work. This is literally just a bar across with 3 pony clamps. Like it's not that complicated. Any of you who have worked a C-stand before, you could set this up. And as you're seeing how big and soft and wrappy this light is, it's something you could achieve very easily. And it's not that much extra money to rent. An extra C-stand, this bar, and the silk. Derek, you're the rental guy. How much would that be?
$30.
$30. There you go. So don't be intimidated by the size. And we'll bring that up. So now that it's much softer, but the issue we're running into is now I'm having to open up on the lens. We were down here, which is an f3.2, but now in order to actually get enough light on her face, I'm having to kind of open up to like a 2.8. But now our background's getting much brighter. So if we had the time and budget, we would maybe punch one more light through. What would you say?
Yeah, I mean, you do want your subject to have the most light so that they're sticking out from the background.
We're trying to show you what things look like because you might be like, I don't have the budget for that, but I think we should. I kind of, why not? So we want to show you what it looks like building this all the way up. You may be satisfied with the half grid and the Nova light at 100%, which it did look good, but we want to show you, since we have the time and we're here to teach, let's add one more light in through this full grid, because the full grid is softer. And with one more light, we'll be able to bring Kim's exposure similar to our really bright background. But now, to me, it's starting to feel sourcey again, where it feels like she's being lit. And I think that's because the background's getting so dark.
So right now we have a hard light as kind of like that secondary source. So our softest light is closest to our subject because we want that nice soft feeling. And then we have a hard light.
And you back those off usually so they're not as spotty.
Yeah, so this one's kind of filling up the frame, but it is still pretty hard coming out of the source, and we're only at 37%. So I would probably add a little bit of diffusion in front of this, maybe just a quarter grid, and then back it up a little bit. But it depends if you want that soft look on your subject or if you do want a hard edge.
What if, could I just see what it looks like on this side of this lamp? This is more so for my curiosity, because we're nearly coming at her from a 90-degree angle. That might be why it's casting more shadow. Yeah, I'm already liking that more, Derek. Maybe just edge it that way. This is me not as a gaffer lighting this, but it looks so nice on here.
It really depends on what you're going for in the story, Mark. Because if you wanted this to be, a little bit more brighter and upbeat, then we would want that level on our subject. I could bring this up and you can ND down, and that's going to bring the windows down. Every time you ND, I go up, and then we hold a lot more of those highlights outside.
We are getting pretty dark in the room. Now that's something we could perhaps fix in post. We could give her a power window and bring up some kind of the edge on the room. But what Derek and I just discussed, what we're gonna do is put a silk in front of this light, was Derek's suggestion, just to kind of soften it up a bit. And then we're on our full here, and we're probably just gonna go back to the half, just so that we're not having to make Kim, we're not having to punch as much light, and the more light we have to punch through this, the more sourcey it's becoming, and that's what we're kind of feeling like. Suddenly there's a spotlight on her, and we're trying to avoid that. But this is good. It's showing you that even someone like myself can do some of this if you're intimidated by it. One nice thing about a grid like this is we're gonna seat our director down here. Their head's gonna be here, and they'll be leaning up against this grid. And sometimes when you have a smaller light source, if someone were to be that close to the light, they'd cast a shadow. But because our source is so big here, we're gonna be safe. Yeah, we're back to that softer look, a little less sourcey. We're showing with two lights. It's helping, but to be honest, I didn't mind it with one light before. It was actually looking quite good as well.
I think people could get pretty close with the one light, and that's where it's like, you could spend the extra little 10 minutes that we did and make it a little bit more punch to battle the window.
Yeah.
But it was really good with one light.
Now, the last thing we're gonna do, since we have a little bit of time left, is give her just a little bit of hair light, just because you can still see a bit of this like sun hitting the window here, and you're kind of seeing the backlight of the couch. To me, it's insinuating that there, as you mentioned, you're like, oh yeah, that feels like it's motivated by the window.
Yeah, so we could option two lights. We'll option a hard hair light and a soft hair light.
Perfect, let's see them, and that will be the last thing we'll do for this setup. One other small lesson about using bigger lights is, I know when I was in film school, they always told us to have your key light and then your fill light. And that was because our lights weren't wrapping as much. They were much more sourcey, so you had to have a fill light in order to not get that shadow. But as you can see with this setup, with how big our grid is, we actually don't need a fill light. We don't need anything from that side, because when Kim looks at camera, you're seeing the shadows and the fall off is actually quite soft. It's not as intense. We're not getting this really intense Rembrandt triangle. The light is much more softer and wrapping around here. So when you have a bigger source, sometimes there's actually less need for all the other little lights. You have something on the front of here. Tell us what this is.
Yeah, so this is just a projection attachment, and because it is a lot heavier than just a light, we're just gonna mount it on the yoke that it comes with to balance it out a little bit more. So these projection attachments, you can get them for a little light like this or a big light.
So yeah, let's option it on there, Derek. Okay, I'm starting to, it's so subtle, but it is there. It is nice. What's nice about it is because it's so subtle, it's kind of feeling realistic. You can see.
I'm gonna go all the way up to 100%, Mark.
We're talking right here on Kim. There's 100. Yeah, now starting to feel sourcey.
Yeah, so let's dial it down to taste, right? If we did want a hard cut, you know, on the side of her to emulate the sun coming in, or you know, another popular trick by some DPs is to do a hard cut on the body, because you don't want a hard cut on the face, because then it's really distracting. But if you do a hard cut on the body, then it's like, well, you know, now I have this emulating sun feel on her,
Yeah.
but I'm not taking away off her face.
Yeah, it kind of feels like some of the sun's coming through. It's very subtle. Can you go off
Yeah.
and on? It's so, I can barely even see it there. Derek has mentioned this a few times, that cinematography is a preference. So we're kind of showing you a few different versions of the same setup, and it's your taste. You know, this isn't necessarily the right way or the perfect way. There is no perfect way. It's to your taste. What's so fun about this is you can light one of these scenes 20 different ways. So we're trying a hand light, and I find often I'm figuring out on the day, we're like, do we want hand light? Do we want hair light? And then always what happens is the second you hit roll, it's like you then know what you actually like, and you're like, oh, I should have done the hair light, but we're messing around with it right now. The last thing we're gonna do is, Derek has given the idea of actually booming in a soft light above her. You've seen from the side a hard spotlight, giving her the hair light and on her arms.
So we're just doing a really simple boom arm right now. This could end up in the shot, I don't know. But this is just a grip arm on a C-stand, you know, no fancy, you know, 750 boom or 2K boom. We're keeping it really simple for this, you know, test.
So we've just added our nanlite tube. Then you can see in the top of frame here, we're getting a little bit of a flare. So Derek's booming up already, he knows.
Is this in the shot at all, Mark? That's one thing we have to make sure for a small little boom like this. Are we?
No, you're totally clear. Like you're a bit in the shot, but you're standing far off the C-stand, so you won't be there when we film. It's good. Let's see it on off. I just want to see what it's doing. Yeah, it's doing a little something, you know. To me, when I see that, I go, oh, I'm watching an interview. Do you know?
Yeah.
It's like the hair light is like trendy through the 2000s and in early 2010s. But I mean, some people still might use it, but it just feels like a DP said, and now for the backlight, you know, like and sometimes that's cool. Like you'll see people for their film, it's just the style that you want to establish. Some people do a really intense backlight on everything, and that's a vibe. But we're in a house. You know, this is supposed to be a natural story. There's nothing too intense about this. I want it to feel natural. So I would personally say, let's kill it. Our favorite thing with interviews is slowly adding the lights, although we only have 2 lights here, so it's not gonna be anything too dramatic. But let's see all the lights off there, Derek. And then let's see them slowly being added on. So here's our first light.
Yeah, this is gonna be our hard light, and that's just the 720. And then we have our main key light, which is a soft panel light. The key light right now is at 100%, and our accenting key light is at 43%.
I'm just flipping with the false colors here. I'm seeing that the trees in the background are in the 60 IRE, same with Kim. So yeah, it's starting to feel more even. Simple lighting setup overall. You might think it's quite complicated, but again, just 2 lights and a giant grid. Great job, Derek.
Thanks, Mark.
Awesome, there you go. We did a big lighting setup in that video, but I'm just gonna use the classic lighting setup right now. A window.
That's not funny.
Hope you enjoyed this video, and big shout out to Derek from Set Ready Rentals. He's an impressive guy. He can shoot, edit, direct, light, he can do it all. But again, in this course, we have so many different instructors, people who've shot huge feature films like Maya Bankovic and Christopher Romaiki, all the way down to people like myself showing you how to do quick and dirty lighting setups for your smaller shoots. Everything in between. There's over 60 videos, and we'll be adding to the library for the Cinematic Eye. Always, as we do with all of Art of Documentary, we're always updating our courses, giving you new information. So this course is live and organic, and if you buy it, you get to be part of the community. AOD is over 5,000 filmmakers now, I believe, from all corners of the world. So don't miss this chance. Doors open on September 8th. Again, AOD is only open a few times a year, so you want to get in, or else you'll have to wait a few months until the next time we open the doors. I'll see you on the next one, and again, like I mentioned, comment below, let us know if there's any other lighting tutorials that you guys want. Hey, goodbyes.